This look is not a part of my Makeup for Girlies Who Do Not Like Makeup series. This is for girlies who do like makeup, and this is my event makeup. I have done this as a luxury product version. I'm also going to be doing a drugstore version, and you can stick around and wait for the next video. This one, I'm gonna dive right into it. I'm using the MAC Studio Fix foundation with a Sigma 3D foundation brush. I have covered my foundation application techniques in a previous video, so I'm not going to go over it again, but I really wanted to introduce this brush to you. As you get more and more advanced in your makeup techniques, you start appreciating the multitasking abilities of different brushes, and I really like this one for the different ways that you can use it. The shape of this brush is cut in such a way that you get two faces that sort of slope towards a point, and it allows you to really not just stamp different shapes once you are done with foundation and want to move on to contour, but it also allows you to get deep into certain crevices such as the inner corners of my eyes and just be very smooth and quick with the application compared to a traditional brush. Swiping your foundation works better with this brush compared to buffing in circular motions because of the way it is angled, but it really gives you the best of both a flat foundation brush and a buffing brush. I'm now using the IT Cosmetics Bye Bye Dark Spots Concealer. It also comes with an inbuilt concealer brush, which is also pretty good, but for now I'm just using a tiny bit on only the innermost corners of my eye and really just over any of the areas where I tend to get dark shadows or some dark pigmentation. Using the same foundation brush, I'm blending out all the places where I had applied this concealer. It is after the foundation that I apply the Charlotte Tilbury Flawless Filter, mapping it out on areas that I want more projected outwards of my face. And it's just going to give a gentle glow, like a lit from within sort of a look. I'm using the same foundation brush as before and just blending it all in without spreading it out too much this time. I don't want to disturb the placement of the flawless filter too much, and I definitely don't want to move it to areas such as my under eyes where it might just reflect light in a way that makes it look like I've got hollow deep eye sockets. Using the Studio Fix Powder Foundation to set my makeup, I'm also going to use this to add more coverage in areas I had left behind. I'm using this fluffy sort of brush, rolling it on my foundation and just tapping and then pressing and then lifting my brush. So I'm essentially pressing it rather than rubbing it around my face. By pressing it, I'm not moving the foundation at all, and it just sets the way it was laid out. If you've noticed, I haven't brushed off much of the powder foundation away, and that is because I'm looking for higher coverage and I trust this brush to spread things evenly. But if you are new to makeup, I would recommend that before you apply it on your face, you should always dust off your brush. For highlight and contour, I'm using the Charlotte Tilbury Glowgasm palette, or is it Nudegasm? I think it's Glowgasm. And I'm using my flat contour brush from NARS and taking a contour shade, which is a more neutral shade in this palette, and carving out shadows at points where I'm kind of indicating with my fingers right now. Like I've mentioned in previous videos, I kind of like to see my contour as a sort of a stamp. So I place my brush below and around the areas that I want to jut forward of my face. So everything that I will touch with my brush now is going to retreat back into the background. And hence it's going to look smaller or thinner depending on the placement. There, I'm carving out my jawline. I'm making my forehead look rounder and thinner, like horizontally. Now I'm using a darker but warmer shade as a bronzer and placing it just slightly above the contour areas that I had just filled in. This brush does most of the work for me, and I don't have to try to force draw a straight line. I'm using the same contour to also deepen my eye socket, but not at the eye socket, slightly above it. By bringing it above, I'm creating an illusion of my eye being bigger, stealing some of that space from between my eyelid to my eyebrow and drawing it back in to my lid space. I'm contouring my forehead a little further and just making sure that I get as rounded a forehead as I possibly can, because that's just a look that I like. I'm using the same palette. I'm going to go for the lighter highlighter color. This one's quite shimmery. It's not really champagne-y, it's not really golden. It's just the perfect barely there highlighter. Like, it's intense, but it's still, the color is such that it still feels like it's just my skin, just extremely shinier. Using the leftover on the brush around the sides of my face, but slightly more towards the center compared to where I had placed my contour earlier. The contour was more on the edges, and this is closer to the center. Now, the same goes as an underpainting for my eyeshadow. And then I'll use a rose-toned highlighter as an underpainting for my blush and also above my eyelid. My favorite blush, this is Rose Subtil, I guess if that's how you pronounce it, by Estée Lauder. And I am just using it where I typically place my blush, more towards the apples of my cheeks and going higher. I do not do that trendy, closer to the mid-face kind of blush placement. And you can see what a nice neutral to cool toned sort of a blush this one is. I always take the leftover and draw it to my eyelids, and I'm just moving close to see if there's any patchiness anywhere. If I see patchiness, I'll just take a clean brush and just buff very lightly. I won't be pressing the brush bristles against my skin too much. I'm literally just dusting off any excess powder and gently nudging it to blend with the surrounding powder without disturbing the placement too much. It's eyeshadow time. These are all the brushes that I'm using, and this is the palette that I'm using. This palette is the original Makeup by Mario. This is not the same as the cool toned one. I'm taking the darkest color, which is black, almost black, pretty much black. I tap my brush on the mirror to get some of the excess powder away, and I make my wing. If you notice, this one is a flat thin brush, and this is also the one that I have used in some of my previous videos, this sort of a flat angular brush. If you're a newbie, I recommend using a cream eyeshadow, but this is not a newbie version. This is assuming that you have some skill with your eyeshadows already. This is one of my highly recommended palettes in general in life. I'm carefully drawing the inner corners and pulling it out to meet the outer wing that I had made earlier. I repeat this on the other side, and then I use a fluffy but flat eyeshadow brush with a neutralish brown. Again, I tap off the excess on the mirror, and I use the flatness of the brush to my advantage and just deepen the placement of my contour. You can see how I've created almost like a floating crease above my natural crease. Now at the edges of my eye, I'm going to blend this eyeshadow into my eyeliner without disturbing the eyeliner point, but only towards the outmost corner am I trying to draw this shadow in towards my eyeliner. Using the smudger brush, which is actually a little more pointed than what typical smudging brushes are, I'm using that same color that I had used to draw out my crease, tapping off the excess just a bit and drawing the outer lower shadow of my under eye. It's not going to be eyeliner shadow, it's going to be slightly lower than that, but it's not going to be thick and low enough that it starts looking like dark circles. After I'm done with my lower line, I'm going to use the same brush to add some of that brown just above where I had made my black eyeliner shadow line. This just softens the line a little more, and you can see the results here. Just doing the same on the other side. I want to introduce the black line gently and not just suddenly. Otherwise, the eyeliner starts looking too stark and relatively unnatural, and it shrinks the eye rather than making it look larger. So if you're someone who thinks that eyeliner doesn't suit them, you should try out this slightly more blended eyeliner technique. I'm using that brush to sort of blend the black into the brown that I just applied. You can spot it here, the floating eyeshadow crease that we had made above, which I'm blending out right now, and that eyeliner and that empty space between them. I'm using my Charlotte Tilbury Palette of Pops eyeshadow quad set, which is all shimmers, and I'm adding shimmer to that empty space that I had left between my crease and my eyeliner shadow now. Using the lightest shade right at the center where my pupil would be, replicating on the other side, and then taking the darkest shade, and this is also shimmer, but now getting slightly onto that floating crease that we had created earlier. I'm using two mascaras. One is Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk and the other is MAC Stacks. I like these kind of lash curlers because they're very compact and they're very easy to travel with because of that. I'm using the Pillow Talk mascara for the roots of my lashes. This way I'm going to be able to lift it and separate it as much as possible. This is something that the Pillow Talk mascara really specializes in, and this is also why I use two separate mascaras, because this one is not going to give me some intense volume and length. So this is good for the base and the roots of my lashes. I'll then do the rest of my lashes with this MAC Stacks mascara. It is actually designed to allow repeated layers of mascara over the previous one. So you can just keep doing multiple coats until you get the desired lash volume and length. By the way, my camera was acting really finicky for this video. I'll cover my favorite mascara application techniques in a very detailed video someday. But I have some cool hacks that I like to use with my mascara in one of my previous videos. Let's do our standard post mascara cleanup with a Q-tip. I love using the Nudestix matte lip plus cheek pencil because then I don't have to use a separate lip liner. This one's also very long wearing, so it just works out fine for me. I'm trying not to overline much this time because I almost always tend to give in, overline my lips. But this time I'm trying to stay very close to my natural lip line. Once I'm done lining my lips, I'm going to use the flatter edge of the lip pencil to fill in the rest. Just fixed my finicky camera. Brushing out my eyebrows allows me to remove some of the leftover makeup from within my eyebrows and also to just make them behave and sit where I want them to sit. This would be different for someone who does not have bushy eyebrows like mine. Mine are quite a pain to handle, to be honest. You would rather draw out your eyeliner line if you didn't have bushy eyebrows like mine. And then I'm going to be using a setting spray. Sometimes a setting spray makes your hair wet, which means that any straightening that you may have done, especially if you have curly hair, kind of goes away. So I'm just redoing the roots of my hair and I'm pulling them against my face so that there's some volume. This segment should be a part of a hair tutorial that I should probably do someday. And if you want it, you should comment about it and subscribe so that I know that that's the next video that I should make. I figured I could go with a slightly darker eyeliner, so I'm just going over with my Chambor eyeliner gel pencil and just darkening the edges a little. Not so much towards the center of my eye. I'm going to do this and repeat on the other side. So this is the final look. Tell me what you think about it. Tell me if I missed any details that made this hard to follow along. And do subscribe and tell me what more would you like to see from me. I'm just showing you all angles, by the way, so that you know what this look looks like from the edges as well. Okay, now I'll see you. Bye.